I have promised to do an earnings financial astrology video. Time's got away from me a little bit and we're getting into the earnings. So I thought I'd actually pick Tesla. It's a really interesting one because Tesla is always quite volatile. The public don't love it. Well, they never used to. Now we've got this sort of whole new breed of the public, and maybe they're younger, I'm not sure, that have started investing. And they're actually a bit more pro-Tesla than they used to be. So we used to get really, really volatile, very negative price movements with Tesla. We had a lot of the big professionals heavily shorting. Obviously, they've all been wiped out. But there was a very negative sentiment on Tesla. And actually, when you look at this natal chart, this is the natal IPO chart. I guess it's like the birthday chart. You can really sort of see, you can see all these red lines and big red triangles. So this chart has got a little bit, I guess, that it's working with red being negative. It's kind of the angriest stuff. It's got some good stuff too. You might see some blue triangles in there if you've got a good eye. But one big thing here, we've got Sun opposition Pluto, and Sun actually represents Elon Musk in this chart. Pluto is business and power and stuff. And I think that's quite a, might be a self-explanatory if you understand this stuff. How sort of business is, against the CEO. So the opposition means against. It means it's sort of fighting against each other because it's so far away. It creates quite a negative transit, which is called an opposition. So this Sun opposition Pluto is really quite strong here. You also do have something called a T-square, but that's getting a bit advanced. So I won't go into that because I want to do sort of stuff for traders here if they want to start using financial astrology. So anyway, this is your Tesla IPO chart. Getting a bit more into it later, you could probably see a lot of other reasons why this stock sort of goes up and down. Anyway, what we're doing is we're looking at the earnings. That is April 30th, 2020. Price has been pretty good. It's been going up for the last few days, and we'll actually take a quick look at that at the end of the video and sort of show why that might be. I'm just adding this slide so I can show you that I've done this video prior to earnings. I haven't been able to release it before because I don't really, got to be careful that I'm not giving financial advice because I am not registered. I am a financial astrologer. So this is purely an educational video for financial astrology content. So unfortunately I have to show this after rather than before because I know a bit of hindsight obviously does nothing, but we're trying to guess the earnings outcome here. As far as earnings, we are going to use this chart, but we can't use it like this. It's not giving us what's going on at the moment. So we're coming from a trader's perspective that we definitely want to trade the Tesla earnings to the upside or downside, go long or short for what we think it's going to become. So we take this chart and then we're going to put it with what's going on at the moment, which are the transits. So you have the transits to the IPO natal chart. So what I've done is I've taken the Tesla IPO chart and I've set it with the transits of the day of earnings. Now the Tesla IPO chart needs to be set to the time that it debuted. I just default to 9:30 in the morning with the US unless I know the exact time that it opened. But with earnings, a couple of hours here or there isn't going to make too much of a difference. And that is because our financial planets that we're mostly using move really, really, really slowly. That they can take days, weeks, months to move around the solar system. So they're not really going to move much from position where they're at. The little numbers sort of show how they're moving. Now, obviously, they do make certain aspects on certain days, which are really, really powerful. But when we're looking at earnings, don't fret too much, for the hour if you don't know the earnings are coming out exactly what time of the day. Yeah, if you really want to fine tune it with, say, the moon being the public, you will get the time off that you get the early earnings calendar and you have a look. But, the big stuff, the big planets we're going to create the big price are really what we're looking at. Mercury is really, really important in earnings because it's communication. So that's something that, when you're getting more into it and more in depth and have a better understanding of financial astrology, you can fine tune things a little bit. And just to add, when I say opened up, I actually mean the time that the IPO opened up on the market. You ideally set your chart exactly when, the stock debuted. If you're using Facebook, that was such a dramatic day, you probably actually need to find the time that the stock actually managed to open on the exchange. For earnings, I have set it pre-earnings. Here I've just got 8 o'clock in the morning before a 9:30 open. But the big planets we're looking at are not going to change. That little sort of red sign being Leo. Now that might be different if Tesla actually opened up at 12 o'clock. But for the sake of the exercise here, it's really not going to make a difference for what we're going to be looking at. So this all looks probably a little bit confusing. You look at this thinking, I just don't even understand this, which everyone should think when they look at an astrology wheel. It does take a little while to understand what's going on here, but there is an easier way that we look at it. Eventually, you do get to learn this pretty easily after a little while, and it will make a lot of sense. Again, in financial astrology, we're not using everything, and it's just a matter of learning what planets we use and just getting to know what they look like and where they are. So when I'm looking at this, I can pretty quickly at a glance see nothing is either what's known as opposite or conjunct, and conjunct means on top of each other. So that means the numbers would kind of match. You'd see two things. You can see at 12, there's two things that are both at 12, and that's called when something's conjunct. Anyway, I'm just quickly looking at the financial planets here. I've got no big conjunctions or oppositions. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to flip over and I'm going to take a look at the transits. I'm going to be looking at just the main financial planets and what aspects they're making and what's known from the IPO to the natal chart. It has to go that way around. The aspects have to hit the natal. It can't be the other way around, or it'll just send everything completely into the abyss. So anyway, let's flip over and let's look at the transits that are going to be hitting the Tesla chart on earnings date. I think this is quite a good one to use. So I flipped over. And if we look here, this is a pretty clear road ahead, and this is actually a really pretty nice chart at the moment. I just took a quick look at the stock chart, and I noticed that the stock price is, still up there a little bit, and it's been going up for the last few days. And this would absolutely make me see why, there hasn't been any of these big, usual Tesla sort of big red candles coming along. Obviously, we have to take technical analysis into financial astrology. I really don't think you can use one without the other. You can do it, but you are just not going to get the same profit loss price result if you don't use them in tandem. Anyway, so I noticed the chart was a little bit overbought, and I think it's sort of natural to, take a bit of profit. I think we had, so the futures came down last night, and with earnings coming up, it would be natural to want to take some profit if you've got an overbought chart. So that's the beauty of financial astrology. It's sort of the thing that adds a bit of time here. So if you're sitting in some good profit, you might just want to take that, or you might have even come late into this trade even more so. So the extra profit of earnings, or whether it loses in earnings, is going to make a big difference to you. I personally never advise coming in late into a trade, but that's just what some people do. And this is the perfect way so we can analyze if we want to get in or stay or out with earnings. So for me, if I was in this trade and I had pretty good, I've come in at a good price and my risk reward is really good, I would stay in this chart for earnings. I have actually circled some planets on the left. I've circled the Sun, Saturn, Uranus and Pluto. Look, the Sun we don't use too much, but I just think for this exercise I've just kept it in there because it's in good shape. What's a really nice example with this one is we just don't have anything in the way. This is a really, really clear, great example when learning financial astrology, because we can see there's just a lot of positivity going on. Positive is blue, negative is red, as I've said before in this case. And we're just using the financial planet, so forget about that stuff at the bottom. We don't really need that. And everything is just almost in good aspect of everything. Every single financial planet is really happy here. And we have every single financial planet making a good aspect to another financial planet. So in this case, I would not expect these earnings to be negative. If there is, I would be quite surprised. There is no absolutes in financial astrology. You can't take it as gospel, but you can make a pretty good calculated guess, which is the whole aim here. Again, as I always say, we're going for that imaginary crystal ball. One thing I really notice here is Uranus, and Uranus is the planet of out of the blue, unexpected surprise. It can shake things up, it can do it to the downside, it can do it to the upside. But there's a really lot of good Uranus aspects here. We have Pluto and Mars and the Sun going on. Well, we'd love to have had Jupiter in this, but we can't have everything. But I just wouldn't I'd be surprised if there wasn't some sort of out of the blue, unexpected surprise element in these earnings. This sort of looks strong enough to me that it could take a couple of funds by surprise. That's just both ways. You've got it both transly and natal. The planets at the top are the planets that are in the natal chart. So you have the company's Uranus making a really nice aspect to Saturn, and Saturn's sort of a bit of karma. More importantly, you've got Uranus doing this really, really nice stuff. You've actually got a really nice Jupiter trine Saturn, which I think will come out really nicely in the earnings as well, which is, Jupiter, Saturn's quite important. But this Uranus that's coming along, it's making a really nice sort of 0-degree sextile, which is that sun-looking thing, star, I should say. And it's making this nice sextile to the sun, which is Elon Musk in this chart, to communication, which is, Mercury, and a communication in earnings is very, very important. So, you might have this kind of out of the blue communication by the company, and it's nice against Mars, which is sort of energized stuff, and it's making a nice trine to Pluto, and Pluto is the planet that rules business. Just as Saturn rules the company and Pluto rules business. It's a little fine-tuning differentiation there. Then we have the sun at the top. Again, we've got our Mercury communication. It's really nice, actually, Mercury against Pluto and the sun, even though it's not a financial planet as such, but communication again in earnings. And then again, we've got the sun, which is, I guess it's just a bit of cream on top. The sun is the sort of life force and stuff, and it is just making really good aspects to like all the financial planets and everything up there. So it looks pretty good. I just want to add, don't know if I love the markets moving forwards. Obviously, we're getting very toppy in price, and a lot of these sort of big stocks, especially the ones that are the most popular, can follow the markets down. However, I have looked ahead in the Tesla sort of charts that look like this in time, and everything looks pretty good actually. So I'll just move ahead and I'll show you where I've seen. It'll be actually quite interesting to see if Tesla has, I guess I like to call it cosmic protection, when the markets start to take a bit of a dipsy doodle, as my mentor would call it. They start to go to the downside or swing really wildly. I always say that trading stocks or holding stocks with good astrology that has that sort of astrological protection is always my preferred way to go. Sometimes I'll sell everything, but it seems to have a bit of a buffer zone on it. But again, just to add, everything can go down with the markets. But, let's take a look at the astrology moving forward and we'll see what's going on. Now, I've actually just run it for like a month ahead when I think things will start to turn. That's when Jupiter and Saturn and Pluto will all be retrograde. So let's have a look what's coming up. So I've moved forward a month. I guess I've kind of done that because that's about when I, think the markets will start turning. And even in some of my own holdings, they're doing all right. I'm trying to decide now whether the market's getting toppy. Am I going to wait, and do some decent astrology right up until that point? I'm going to sell, so that's sort of where you start looking at as a financial astrologer. So anyway, I've moved forward to mid-May here. And again, we've still got a pretty clear path. You might see with the sun and moon. Now, everyone's going to know those symbols. So, the two at the top, things are starting to change a little bit, but they're really fast-moving planets, so they will change all the time. Those, unlike the slow-moving business planets, are never going to just sort of keep the same energy going on and on. So looking at our business planets, stuff is still looking pretty good. Our Uranus stuff is really still pretty tight, and our Saturn's tight, and our Jupiter's tight. So if news doesn't come in earnings, it's very possible that it's going to come after. It's a bit of a tough one to know whether it's exact for earnings, but, there's nothing negative to say that, bad numbers, because we're obviously looking at, price per share and the figures and stuff. So there's no kind of daily bad transits we're going to show bad figures. But we can see that this sort of really strong energy is going to keep going. So when we look at a chart in a little bit, I'm just going to show how to start using time looking ahead with technical analysis and charts. But everything still here is looking pretty good. So if the earnings don't surprise, I would still be looking for positive news in the next few weeks. I've actually just quickly circled the stuff here, just the financial planet. So when you sort of take that out with everything, you can really see all this kind of positive stuff. The triangles are called a trine, and the starry looking things are called a sextile. And again, these are all your business planets making contact with all your business planets. So let's have a look at it, how we would use that with charts. So this is where we add the technical analysis in. You can see we're pretty overbought, down the bottom. We're not that far off the top in price. It's not like, we've come right down. We're near that moving average. I've only got the 50 and the 200 just to make life a bit easier here. It's not usually how I set my charts, but I'm not using the paid version, so I've only got a choice of 3 indicators. But taking a look at it, you also can see that there also might be a bit of a formation of a bull flag. I guess if I sort of take that 525, I don't know, I'm just being very rough, take it up to that 770, we've got a bit of a flag into itself in there, and then we've come back up again into 8. It's very possible that we might form a bit of a bull flag with some news that comes up. I'm going to imagine most traders that look at this think that there's a gap, very, very big gap there, just, above 660, whatever. And I'd say most traders think that that gap is going to get filled. Now, if the markets turn, it probably will get filled. So, they're not wrong in thinking that. But we're also looking at that upside scenario where there's also that upper gap at 900, and the astrology just might be strong enough that I'm going to show you that's coming up, that we might go up also. Look, if the markets weren't going to get so funky moving ahead, I'd be a little more, say that's a probability. But just with the markets, if they do turn and we're so toppy, we're just kind of just using these how to use financial astrology and technical analysis scenarios. So definitely don't take this as trading advice or that it is fact. I'm just going to add, while it's a great astrology chart, it's probably not so fantastic that the transits that you've seen would create that sort of 880 bull flag from earnings. You might probably need to see more conjunctions and a couple of, a bit more Jupiter, Uranus. I'm not really sure. I do think they'll be really good, but, please don't take this as me saying, that earnings result is going to be enormous. A good way that we would have used that is when the markets had come down, and say I'd seen that astrology for where we're at now, and I saw those positive transits. That would have been a really good thing to have seen, to know that would be a pretty good buy off those lows, and that we could have held it with a really good risk reward situation and have bought it into these transits coming up. Probably have to look back on it to see if they were there then or not when the market fell. As this specifically is about trading earnings, I'm going to imagine pre-market that this thing is going to be all over the shop. You always see that, with any stock, big one pre-market, particularly Tesla. I think this is going to go up and down all over the place. And I guess the point with using financial astrology for earnings, we might want to look at some weakness to, take a position, or on the other side, if it was, a negative chart, you'd take any strength to short. But we've seen that we think these earnings might be pretty good. So if you're not in already, you could just look for a little bit of profit taking with that overbought signal. Use your technical analysis to find out what price you want. Look, who knows, it might fill that gap. I don't trade this, so this is just really just picking any example and making a video about it. When you trade stocks a lot, you get to know them pretty well and how they react. I don't trade earnings and news. I've done that, and I've sat in front of a computer for most of my day on end. I actually tend to like financial astrology to do more of a swing trade. I like to take a very, very low risk reward, sitting around that 200-day moving average if I see good news coming up. And then I like to hold it for Look, 3 months is, a nice time for me. I like to keep my money rotating and working so that I'm more of a swing trader than a day trader. If you're a day trader, or if, we think the markets are going to get a bit, funky coming ahead, we've had such a big extension from the lows that we don't really want to have any money in the markets, and we want to keep our risk low so that we're just going in and out to make our, with the extra money wage living however you trade. Financial astrology is an excellent tool if you don't want to have a lot of risk in the markets, or particularly say we're coming up to this sort of extended scenario where we're at now, where, we could go either way and everyone sees something different. In this example, it's a 2-hour window where we can literally, get your money in and get it out, so that we aren't, you can either just only want to allocate 2 days of day to trading, or we just don't have any risk sitting in the markets overnight. There's 2 ways you can use financial astrology as technical analysis, and that's either as confirmation bias, or the way I tend to use it as a lot is I find it really tells you something different, what the charts are going to do. I noticed a really, a golden moving average cross on the DAX last night, and then the markets fell through the futures and that didn't hold. So, that just sort of tells you a few things. Because we're coming into a Sun square Uranus, which is, at the moment, it happened on a Sunday. We've got a 4-day trading window, and that actually is a bearish move for us. So that would be a thing where financial astrology would be more powerful than a really, really strong indicator on a chart. As of this time, we are not finished the window. So we still have sort of 2 to 3 days to see if the markets are going to come down or that golden cross reigns supreme. Because this is financial astrology on Tesla, I'm going to go back to Tesla. This is actually the IPO natal chart. This is the chart that hasn't got anything going on in the sky. It looks a little bit different, obviously, to the one I've just showed you. And this is because this is the IPO chart of transits. It's what the planets are hitting each other in the chart we used for when the IPO launched. And actually, you can't really see that much great going on here either. One thing, probably the best thing on this is you have Uranus conjunct Jupiter. That means that your surprise, kind of out of the blue stuff, is making a really nice hit, and it's quite tight. Being number 1, it means that it's in, really, really tight transit, so it's quite strong to luck. And I think that really is quite synonymous with the history of Tesla trading and how it trades. You get this kind of out of the blue news, and then I guess in the other way we get a lot of news to the downside with Tesla, and the prices take these really, really big downswings. And the reason for that is we have Pluto, the business planet. It's not in very good shape. It's opposite the Sun, CEO, as I said before, and it is opposite that Uranus, which is that out of the blue, surprise, turbulent kind of stuff. And that's why you get these really, really big downswings. I just quickly slid in here an extra title to show that Pluto squared Jupiter at 1. I really just don't like that either. It's just, anything squared Jupiter in a natal chart is just not great. You really want to see Jupiter, conjunct sextile trine. But there is something going for it. It's known as the magic formula. It is something that is in my book. I'm not going to give it away on video. I tend to keep things, as I've said before, for people that want to be students of financial astrology, or, nice enough to purchase my book, that want to go a bit further into it. So there is this thing, this sort of magical setup. And again, that sounds really esoteric, but you have the business planets. And that's specific business planets making contact with each other, which, creates this magic formula. Obviously, they have, really interesting product, great product. It's for the future. So obviously, I'm not just saying that, just some astrology made the company where it is, but the day that you launch your company has a lot to do with the success of your IPO, and that is something really, really important in financial astrology. I've seen people use Elon Musk's chart when they are talking about Tesla with financial astrology, or one financial astrologer. Personally, I only use the IPO chart. I mean, obviously we're talking about earnings here. The IPO chart is more what's going to dictate the actual price swings and time on the market. The overall chart might give the overall outcome of Tesla, but here for us, time and price are what's important, and using time and price and a chart together. So that's why we're just using the IPO chart, and I'm not going to go into Elon Musk's chart, which I heard is quite interesting. I haven't looked at it for a while. So that is the financial astrology of how to trade earnings or look for earnings and see how we think they're going to come out. If you'd like to know more, www.profitwiththeplanets.com.